All right, welcome everybody. This is Derek, joined by Rich Hofmann. On this week's Sixers beat, we been a couple weeks since we had Rich on. He has been traveling a little bit, timely travel, as you went on the Memphis, Miami, Orlando road trip before we knew that the Memphis, Miami, Orlando road trip mattered. But welcome back.
Happy to be back, man. You got on that last leg, the circus that was the Orlando Magic in mid-November. I don't think that
Yes.
I don't think they've had quite that many media for one of those games, but desperate times. And honestly, after watching this past weekend of games, it seems like that media was warranted.
Yeah, and I mean, it is... So there, obviously a lot of today's podcast is going to be about Jimmy Butler and how he's played so far and how he impacts everything. It is certainly, there is a give a shit about this team that even with the playoff run, you don't normally get a middle of November game, that much scrutiny, that much attention. I think NBC Sports said it was the highest rated game since 2001, regular season game since 2001. That seems about right. I don't know what other game would be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like Iverson's return to Philly or something, but not much.
I was thinking maybe Embiid's debut, but I think that was much more of a momentous moment for a small segment of the fan base, or a relatively small segment of the fan base. Yeah, it is the most excitement this team has had in a while. It is okay. So let's start off. Initial impressions of Orlando's ice cream machine. No, I'm just kidding.
Can't let that
there's
out.
A story to that. We
man.
might get into that. We'll see. Initial impressions of Jimmy Butler and his overall fit with the Sixers.
I think it's maybe a little cleaner than I thought. I think a lot of people thought as soon as the trade was made, well, this doesn't really help one of their biggest issues, which is shooting. But Butler just takes so much attention, man. And, you saw it last night. Obviously, the two ISOs at the end of the game, that's something the Sixers never do. But when they built that lead in the first quarter, I think I tweeted this out and you responded to it. Like, I don't think I've seen JJ Redick get that easy of, the shots he was getting just seemed so effortless. And I think a big part of that reason was because the Hornets' best defender was on Butler. And in the past, teams would go into Sixers games, game planning for the thing we need to stop. Once we get Ben Simmons stopped in transition, in the half court, it is all about the JJ Redick, Joel Embiid two-man game. Well, now you have to deal with Jimmy Butler. And I think that sort of throws, it makes it a lot easier for Redick to get shots. That's one thing. To just have another ball handler, like, even when they're running their continuity offense and they're just running dribble handoffs, like, just having a guy who can take 4 or 5 dribbles and kind of pick and choose his way to the basket, they didn't have that. I love Robert Covington.
Rich, he came off of a pick and roll the other night, drove to the basket, shielded the ball, and made it simple layup, and it was like,
whoa.
Oh my God, this is a revelation. I didn't know you were allowed to do this in basketball. Yeah.
It was like, holy shit. And I will say, like, I love Robert Covington. I don't want to bash him on the way out because he was a really good player for the Sixers and he netted them a really good player. But he can't do that. No. He cannot. I mean, his weakness was dribbling. And yeah, to just have like a patient pick and roll operator is, I mean, it's a game changer, man. So that's been great. I think defensively, kind of despite Kemba going for 60 freaking points last night, I am, by the way, they have to be so sick of playing against Kemba Walker. You said it. I think it's 7 of their last 40 regular season.
40, yep.
Oh my God. Like, and of course he gives them the goodbye present of 60 freaking points. I kind of wrote about it today on my piece on theathletic.com/Philly. Subscribe if you haven't. Late in that game, it felt like Butler, the way Kemba was beating him was by getting a screen from Embiid's man. And Embiid was too far back in the paint or not, just flat out not paying attention sometimes. and Cody Zeller was setting good screens. But one-on-one, Butler was doing a really good job against Kemba. And again, I think that's the comparison to Covington a little bit, in that sometimes Covington, although he played Kemba pretty well, I think the weaker part of his defense is one-on-one defense. Butler, to me, seems a little bit more consistent one-on-one. And then you end up seeing it last night with the tremendous block at the end of the game. I mean, the save he had, to save that ball over his head. I know, like, when you're a kid, they say, don't save the ball under your own basket. F that. That was amazing. He scoffed at that. And
it was both amazing and risky. I think we can acknowledge both.
Sure, but it worked, so I'm gonna just say it's amazing. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that risk. We're a results oriented business now. But it was just a very impressive athletic play, and then to hit the jumper on the other end, it's been impressive so far. I think a lot of the reason for skepticism is how he would sort of fit with the Sixers in terms of chemistry and locker room and all that stuff. That seems to be going great so far, although I think we can couch that with it's only the first week, and I'm sure he was great in Minnesota the first week too.
I loved Butler after Orlando. He's like, man, we all get along together. And it's like, well, yeah, you've known him for like 12 hours. Like, we'll see.
How many times did he subtweet after the Utah game? Not subtweet, yeah. just I guess.
Man, I can talk to him. Yeah.
Oh my God. He was throwing so much shade at Utah. They don't take it personally. It's amazing.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
All right, a real quick word from one of our sponsors, Harry's. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, which means we're about to enter the silly season of holiday shopping, and guys can be particularly difficult to find gifts for. As someone who's been using Harry's razors for years, let me help take some of that burden off your shoulders and recommend Harry's as a perfect gift. A gift that's both thoughtful and practical while not resorting to stereotypical ties or wallets that he probably doesn't need any more of anyway. Harry's makes long-lasting quality products at a super reasonable price, with German-engineered blades that cost as little as $2 each, which means you can get him a gift he can use now and one that will continue saving him money down the line. You can even personalize it and make it feel special with the option to choose a color that's right for him and the ability to add a personal engraving. With gift sets starting at just $10 and a 100% quality guarantee, Harry's is a gift you can't go wrong with. As a special offer for the fans of the show, we've partnered with Harry's to give you $5 off any shave set, including our limited edition holiday sets when you go to harrys.com/SixersBeat. Plus, you'll get free shipping. This offer is for new and returning customers and is only available for the holidays. Each Harry's shaving set comes with an ergonomic, weighted handle with an option to engrave, German-engineered 5-blade cartridges that provide a close, comfortable shave, foaming gel for a rich lather, a travel cover to protect your blades, and a handsome holiday gift box. Or, if you just want something for yourself, redeem a holidays trial offer to experience the quality of shave before committing. Get your holiday shopping done early. Free shipping ends on December 12th, so act now. Go to harrys.com/SixersBeat to get $5 off a shave set while supplies last. That's harrys.com/SixersBeat. All right, one of the points you brought up was Jimmy Butler drawing the other team's best defender. And, again, this is not against Covington. Like, I would rather have Covington here alongside of Butler
totally
than have Covington be gone. But he would frequently draw the other team's worst defender. And they would hide their weakest defender, a lot of times their shortest defender, on Covington because he couldn't make anybody pay. And having someone in Butler who you can't do that with, in fact, you have to do the exact opposite of that with, I think it does free up, JJ Redick quite a bit. And you look in the half court, and like you said, it was all either an Embiid post-up or an Embiid Redick two-man game. Well, now you can throw in Jimmy ISOs and Jimmy Embiid pick and rolls into that mix, and even a little bit of Jimmy Ben Simmons pick and rolls, which they're playing with a little bit. You just have a lot more that you can go to. He does move pretty well off the ball. That will help with Simmons. When his trade was made, I thought the fit concerns with Embiid were overblown pretty drastically. Like, I thought Jimmy Butler could really help Joel Embiid, and I thought Joel Embiid and the attention he gets as a role man could really help Jimmy Butler. The concern was with Ben Simmons. And I think there's been a little bit of that is borne out to be true. He obviously played extremely well last night, But before then, he looked very tentative, didn't know where to find his spots. When he did try to find his spots, it seemed like he was really trying to attack the post, and that wasn't really working out for him. What do you think about the fit between those two so far?
Yeah, well, Ben played well last night, but yeah, I think it's a tricky fit, but overall, I think Ben Simmons in the half court with a lot of people are tricky fits, unless they're just spot up shooters or like Bellinelli or Redick running off screens. So yeah, I do think there's going to be a little bit of, they're going to have to work some stuff out there. I will say defensively, those guys look pretty impressive together. I mean, they can switch like Covington and Simmons can, and Butler, he has already found a way. Like when he was guarding Kemba last night, when the Sixers got a rebound, Butler was, and he's done this in all the games, he just sprinted down the floor, and Simmons had no problem just throwing that ball ahead to Butler to try and post up Kemba on a mismatch. And they got some buckets. I think somebody made a corner three as I think it was Shamet as a direct result. It's tricky. I don't think I don't think Ben is going to be used to, Jimmy and Joel having the ball in their hands all the time. So that's going to take some work. They're going to have to, they're going to have to make some nice like cuts and passing plays. There was on that Butler drive when he found Simmons for the dunk, that was a really well-timed cut off the ball by Simmons. They're going to need to do more of that because it's not the easiest fit. I think the hope for those two is that their basketball IQ, and a lot was made about that sideline out of bounds play against Utah where Simmons lobbed the ball up to Butler to kind of seal the game. You're going to need plays like that where their basketball IQ and they kind of know where each other are going. Because the shooting fit with Ben off the ball is not the easiest thing in the world to deal with.
This is where you start the lack of progress in Simmons' jump shot in the, what are we at, like 30 months now since he's been drafted? And yeah, he was injured for a part of that, but I mean, that was a lower body injury. He could have gotten some shots up there. He has to make progress on that. And he's made none. He might have gone back as a shooter. Looks a little more confident from the free throw line, but as an in-game shooter, he might be more hesitant than he was at LSU, and certainly more hesitant than he was in high school. And a lot of that goes into the quality of the defenders, speed of the game, distance of the three-point shot, all that stuff. But he just has not made any real, provable, demonstrable progress in his jump shot. And that's so hard. And on the one hand, so a lot of people have looked at this trade and said, oh, well, that means Ben Simmons is a point guard. I've always thought you need to make him not the point guard. He's a point forward. And this is my least favorite discussion in all of basketball. Those designations are ridiculous. They're pointless. They really mean nothing. In terms of being a point guard, Ben Simmons is always going to be the one that Brett Brown is going to give, inbounding the ball. He's going to give it to him to break the press. And, nowadays, it seems like we define point guards by pick and roll play. So if Ben can't do that, he's not a point guard. I just don't, if we're going to have to throw a label out there, I'm going to defend it a lot based off of ability to read what's happening around him, handle the ball, and make decisions. And Ben is still the quote-unquote point guard. But you always looked at his skill set and you said, okay, well, he's not going to be a great pick-and-roll player, at least not until he gets a willing and capable jump shot. You need that skill set to surround him with. So that's Markel's role. That's why he was drafted. They didn't draft him to be the off guard or the two guard or whatever designation you want to throw out there. He was really good with the ball in his hands at Washington. And they wanted that next to Ben Simmons. So this was always the kind of adjustment they were going to have to make. Like Ben Simmons was always going to have to learn how to play with the ball in his hands less frequently than he was accustomed to. And a lot of what he did in the half court at LSU was out of the mid post. And they're trying some of that now, but that's not the sustainable offense it was at college when he had a size advantage on everyone who they even thought of throwing at him. So you are going to run a lot of two-man games with Embiid and Redick. You are going to run a lot of two-man games with Butler and Embiid. And finding a way for Simmons to not kill your spacing and also to provide value, it is going to be a very real adjustment. I do believe that.
It's tough. Yeah, I totally agree with you. On the positive side, I was thinking about this last night, and you're one of the few people who I knew back in the Doug Collins era. But if anybody remembers, at the end of games, at the end of those kind of torturous Sixers games, they'd basically just run ISO for Lou Williams at the end. And I think back then all of us would usually scream, run a play or something. Well, now we're kind of on the other extreme, where all the Sixers do is run plays at the end of games. The problem is it's either the two-man game or something else where there's kind of a lot of moving parts, and that's how you see these. I think it was on an Embiid post up and then the sideline out of bounds play. Just two at the end of the last night's game against Charlotte. Just two inexplicable turnovers by Embiid and Simmons at the end. It is kind of nice to just be able to say, like, all right, Jimmy, just run a pick and roll, or like, dude, we're just ISOing you. Like, we'll get the last shot. It'll be a decent shot, and we're willing to live with the results. I think that was good, and I do think, like, early on, just trusting him with that was a good sign. It's just easier, man. Like, it's like you said last night. If the Sixers had played with their old roster, Walker would have been guarding Covington. He just would have. And Cov might have had, 15, 17 points. But it really would have just been by shooting over Walker. It really wouldn't have been taking advantage of that mismatch. You could see last night, like, Walker was guarding Muscala and Chandler. And while those guys didn't do a good job at all against him, like, I do think it's going to put a level of kind of confusion in other teams. And then, yeah, I mean, Jimmy's shot at the end of the game, it's why you brought him here. There aren't that many players who you could give the ball to in that spot and feel like comfortable. Like, yeah, we'll live with this shot. He can create it, and we'll go down with him. And he delivered, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it really is. Brett said the other day in Orlando that that kind of a play, whether that was a Butler ISO, which they went to last night, or a late pick and roll, they didn't have that personnel. They just flat out didn't. And Markelle sort of kind of showed flashes of that when he could get to the rim, but you're not going to ask him to do that on a last-second shot. So Brett is adapting. I would still like to see them run some late game Embiid Redick stuff. Like, I don't want them to abandon what got them there.
Mix that in.
Yeah, and they did that against Orlando. It's just Redick's big feet stepped out of bounds. So I don't think they're gonna trust me, they're not gonna lead the league in pick and rolls and ISOs. That is not part of them having the fewest pick and rolls was that they didn't have the personnel. Part of it was that Brett Brown, it's not his preferred style of play. So I think in the first 45 minutes of a game, you're probably gonna see them run more pick and rolls, but they're not gonna change their offense overnight. I think where it's really gonna come down, you will see some ISOs, you will see some Embiid, Butler two-man games is going to come at the end of games when they want to simplify it. I hope he doesn't go the full Doug Collins. That was, like you alluded to, that was ugly to watch.
You never go full Doug Collins.
This is a better combination than Evan Turner, Thaddeus Young, so I'll give him that. They should look better, but or Spencer Hawes, you could throw him in there. Doesn't help the aesthetics of it, but you could throw him in there. But it is great. It is great to have options, for sure.
Yeah, he's it's exciting. I don't know. They have not had. Somebody said, like, when is the last time they had a wing player like this? Is it just Iverson? Even though he's not like Butler really that much.
No.
I mean,
Iguodala certainly wasn't.
No, he just wasn't.
We were
as good.
both big Iguodala fans. No.
I mean, are we going back to like Andrew Toney or somebody?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm getting over. Not as bad as I was in Orlando, but I'm getting over something.
He was bad in Orlando, folks. Bad.
I was pretty bad. You certainly know into the level of Jimmy Butler. Like you could throw like Larry Hughes in there, but he was the worst version that you could possibly find. Nobody to this level for sure.
Yeah, so it's been a good start. I know, last night, I think Brett kind of said they're kind of mini defining moments during a season. And, I kind of initially thought about Jake Elliott kicking that 61-yarder against the Giants. You didn't know it was going to happen at that point. It was going to be like the springboard to a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying the Sixers are going to win the Eastern Conference Championship, but their schedule's about to get a lot easier. And making that shot and kind of, finally winning that game. Honestly, last night, didn't it feel exactly like the Detroit game earlier this year?
Yeah, yep.
It was just instead of Blake, Kemba was the guy going off. So to steal that game, and by the way, I think this is a smaller note. The Sixers winning that game from a rest standpoint was crazy. That was on ESPN's schedule alert column. Sixers, most games in the league, 5th back-to-back, playing on the road against a team that had not played since Tuesday night. And they still found a way to get that done. That's pretty cool. But yeah, with the schedule becoming easier, they'll have some time to practice. They'll have some time to rest up. Jimmy will, he'll become more familiar with the offense and just all of his teammates. I do think they have a chance to run off some wins here.
Yeah, and you look up at the standings, they're 4th in the Eastern Conference. They're ahead of Boston. They're standing at 11-7 right now with a perfect 8-0 home record. Which is pretty incredible, but it would be nice to see a little more on the road. And they're just kind of getting all of their pieces both, in uniform, in the gym, and back healthy. Wilson Chandler still on a minutes restriction. He had a 15-minute limit last night, and Brett didn't use him at all in the first half, then used all of them in the second half. Mike Muscala is still wearing a mask. He's not playing up to the level I think most people expect him to, or hope he will. Jimmy Butler, his 3rd game, and really has kind of looked a little deferential at times. Even when he dropped his 28, it's because he was nearly perfect from the field. There are opportunities for Butler to do more from a aggressive standpoint. So you hope that this is a team that sort of, weathered that maybe slightly disappointing play to start the season, turn it around, and now will remain towards the top of the Eastern Conference throughout. And, they still need some depth. Certainly, I don't think that they're comfortable playing as great as he's played, and I think he's been a surprise, but I don't think they want Korkmaz getting as much time as he's getting right now.
The cork is popped,
me personally,
though.
He's popping every game, man. It's a celebration every night. I don't think I want Mike Muscala playing as much 4 as he currently is, but you're sort of low on options of perimeter players to, kind of do that small ball that I think they should pursue, and that Brett Brown probably doesn't necessarily want to pursue because he's always shied away from that a little bit. But, I would like to see far less Amir Muscala lineups. I would like to see Joel Embiid not playing 35 to 38 minutes every night. So you hope they can find some depth. But in terms of top-end talent, when you look at 1 through 4, and I think it's a little bit disrespectful to JJ Redick to never include him in these conversations.
Totally.
Like we always talk about, look at the Sixers' big 3. They got 3 of the top 20 players in the league, and maybe we could probably quibble with that. Probably 3 of the top 30 players in the league. And to not include JJ Redick ever in that conversation, especially with how important his role is to the team and how important his skill set is to the team, that top 4 can match up with a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference. And you still got to kind of figure out that 5th spot. Is it going to be Wilson Chandler throughout? But you have a really good top 4. You address that depth. You get these guys on the same page. You get Jimmy Butler knowing the entire playbook. You get Ben Simmons a little more comfortable in his new role offensively. This team has a lot of potential. And look, as frustrating as it is maybe that Ben Simmons isn't always playing as a quote-unquote top 3 right now, he's still an elite defensive player. And I think a lot of times that sort of gets lost. Like if he can find a way to not hurt your half-court offense while being an elite transition pusher and an elite defensive player and a versatile defensive player, that I don't sleep on Ben Simmons is what I would say.
Yep, but as we discussed, fitting him into the half court is honestly, I think it might be Brett's toughest job right now. That if you told me like what one thing is going to determine how far the Sixers go this season, besides like Embiid playing at an MVP level or whatever, I do think like that's going to affect everything else. And finding a way for Ben to coexist with Butler and Embiid. And now, like, I think a lot of the conversation early in the year has been, well, how does he coexist with Fultz? Well, now he has the fit concerns, but the talent of the players and the effectiveness of the players has jumped up a bunch of notches. So, yeah. What do you it's interesting. The Amir Muscala lineups drive me insane. That said, like, what do you think are some ways to remedy that? I mean, they played 60 minutes together at this point and have not been very successful. I just, with Wilson on a 15-minute restriction, like, I don't know exactly what the answer is. I do think, some of Brett's rotations, I know that has been a source of frustration to some Sixers fans. I also do wonder, though, like, is this team deep enough to have, like, I don't really see any players on the bench who are not playing, like maybe Jonah Bolden, who deserve those minutes. I would say the one thing, though, stop playing Amir and Muscala together. Just find a way. Like, seriously, play Simmons at the 4 or something. But I've had enough of those two guys together. You can't score with those two guys.
Yeah, I mean, in my perfect world, Ben Simmons would be probably the second tallest player on the Sixers lineup pretty much the entire time he's on the court. And in the minutes when he's not, you try to mix in maybe Wilson Chandler at that spot. Not a whole lot of big man depth outside of that, but I would try to limit two traditional big men on the floor as much as I could. But in order to do that, you need wing players and perimeter players who justify that. And when you look at it, like I said, Korkmaz and Shamit are the two you would typically turn to off the bench. Are any of them right now really deserving of more minutes where you would kind of push Ben Simmons up the lineup? I'm not. I think this is where who they target with that 15th roster spot, who they target in the buyout market is going to have a pretty big impact on that, because a lot of people are going to look at it, Chris Sheridan included, they need more power forward depth. And I don't see that at all. Like, that's just not how I view the sport of basketball. It's not how I view this roster construction. That's not how I view Ben Simmons' versatility defensively and how you can maximize that. So, to me, you go out and look, maybe the best player available is a 4. And you can put him alongside Embiid and Amir and Muscala when he's playing 5. Maybe that's the case. But I would just be looking for the best player, the best shooter, and let those kind of resolve itself. But yeah, Amir Muscala lineups to be honest, Muscala at the 4 at all doesn't do a whole lot for me. He just doesn't have the foot speed to where I enjoy those lineups, to where I think that's maximizing your defensive potential. And I would like to see them minimize that. And by the way, they can't score offensively either.
Yeah, it's just not a good fit. And I totally agree with you that, with Simmons, you have the versatility to play different lineups. So if it is a 4 and it's a stretch 4, go ahead and get them if he's the best player. But if it's like a smaller wing who can just stroke the hell out of the ball, well, okay, well then just bump Ben Simmons up a little bit. And that's kind of the beauty of him being able to play all of those positions. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this team coughs up a 20-point lead, it seems like, every night, but that's kind of what happened last year too at this time. So I don't know. It's tough. It feels like to me recently they've given up those leads when Embiid has been in the game, but it's been with like Shamit and Korkmaz and some of these other players. It hasn't been with the starters. And I don't know what the answer is, because it's like you said, the only other player I'm really comfortable playing at the 4 right now besides Simmons is Wilson Chandler. And yeah. He's in the starting lineup, which means a lot of his minutes overlap with Ben. And B, he's on a minutes restriction most nights. I think, a lot of people were wondering why he got taken out of the game in Orlando. He kind of blew past his minutes limit already that night. So that was even though he was playing well, I think it was kind of like the night Embiid kicked the chair a few years ago. Like, he was past it, and they were like, all right, we got to stop this now.
Yeah, I have no doubt that if he wasn't on that, he was at a 20-minute restriction. I think that was about minute 23. I have no doubt if he wasn't on a restriction, he would have finished that game. I don't think that's one you can really throw on on Brett and the, rotation outrage. I don't think that is the case there.
It's tough though.
It's hard.
It's hard. Oh, R.I.P. I do think he. What do you think of the job Brett's done so far this year? Just in general.
Yeah, I don't think it's been great. And I think part of that is the Amir Muscala lineup. Like I don't fundamentally like that. I do think they have switched at times when I don't think they should. But I think a lot of times... You mean
when Muscala's playing the 4?
Yeah. And other switches too. Like I think they're just a little too switch. Like I think there are matchups you don't have to switch and they end up switching, and it leads to mismatches you don't need to leave. The and you pointed out like Vooch was killing him, but the Augustin Vucevic pick and roll specifically, I thought they could have handled better. And that's just the one that's fresh on my mind. But I think by and large we grade coaches based on results. Like last night when Ben Simmons made that turnover, that pass to Embiid, that lob, I got a lot of like, well, how could you call that play? I'm like, no, JJ Redick was sprinting to the top of the key. Like he had options. That play was designed with options. He took the wrong one. And I think a lot of times, like Orlando, do we have that outrage if JJ Redick doesn't step on a 3-point line? Or if JJ Redick doesn't get called for a bullshit offensive foul call? Like, I think there were a lot, especially when I went back and I rewatched it, I thought they got a lot of good looks. I thought they had a lot of plays drawn up well, and none of them materialized, but I don't think they were bad decisions. So I think probably average is kind of what I would say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they have made the most of their talent yet, but I don't think Brett is the reason they got off to a slow start either. And like I said, I think a lot of times with coaches, it's a results-oriented criticism.
I think that's a good way to put it. After last night's game, I do think Jimmy making that nice 3 at the end of the night saved us from a lot of Brett hate at the end of the game, and that's probably the wrong way to look at it because there was 48 minutes and then a whole overtime period before that to judge him on, kind of similar to the Orlando game. Yeah, I do think he has his work cut out. The Amir thing, I just play Muscala at the 5 would be my that would be my main criticism. I think there are some people who don't like his offense, and we'll see. That's something I'm willing to look at over time. How does Butler fit in? Where do they end up ranked? Brett kind of talks a lot about how he values the system. And he pointed to the Miami game on that road trip as an example of like the system staying in place, kind of like a Spurs type thing. You could just plug guys like Korkmaz in. You can plug guys like Bolden in, and they know what to do. We'll see how that happens, or we'll see if that is the best kind of offense in the long run. But yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. I think he's been about average.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think they've adjusted to Butler pretty well here in the first 3 games. My other main criticism was I just don't think Fultz was in a position where he should have started the season, and I didn't think they were ready to really even try to grow and evaluate Fultz and Simmons as a pairing, and they backed off of that pretty quickly, which I think was the right move. So, yeah, I mean, it's we'll see. Honestly, this is the biggest, you kind of go through stages of evaluating Brett. The first 3 years he was here, is he developing guys? Is he keeping the locker room together through really unprecedented losing? Okay, he passed that. But you'd say, okay, well, is he a good coach? Well, we don't really know that yet. So we'll find out when he gets some talent. And then he comes out. They play well in Embiid's rookie season. He gets hurt. They come out and they overachieve in Embiid's first full season. And you say, okay, the team overachieved. A coach has to get credit for that. Well, now they've got real legitimate, at least Eastern Conference contending core. Now he's going to be reevaluated in a different context. And I think Brett's a smart basketball coach. I think he has a lot of good ideas. I think his clubhouse loves him. Do I know that he's a top 5 to 7 coach in the NBA? No, I don't. And I mean, I don't consider that disrespectful. There's a lot of really good freaking coaches in the NBA. But I'm pretty confident he's also not in the bottom 10 coaches in the NBA. So I think right now we'll be figuring out where exactly in that range he falls and whether he has a capability of moving into that top 5 to top 7 range. And we just don't have enough information right now.
Did we really go 34 minutes without talking about Fultz? I do think his just a quick take on him, because I think it's been nice to kind of not mention him for a while. Even with the very strange free throw shooting. I think we'll just leave that there. Just a quick tip of the cap. He is attacking the rim like crazy and playing really hard.
Yes, he is.
So good on you, Markel. Hopefully you can figure out whatever is ailing you at the line. But I do think as a backup point guard, he has done some legitimately cool things. And the freaking pull-up jumper looks good. It does.
And he's playing some legitimately good defense too, which, considering where he started the season at, that is a huge step in his development. He is playing almost as well as you could expect a 6'4" point guard play when he can't and won't shoot outside of the paint. And that sounds a little bit like a backhanded compliment, but I really don't mean it to be the case. He is playing much better in every facet of the game that does not involve shooting the ball outside of the paint.
Cool. What
And I hope one day, I really, really hope one day we don't have to couch it with that.
But we do.
And that's another one where the lack of progress is concerning. And whatever is at the center of that, I hope they figure out and address, because I do think there's a talented kid in there. I've always said that, and I think he's showing more of his talents on an NBA court. And I hope this isn't the one thing that defines his career.
Agreed. What is there anything else we haven't hit?
Yeah, we have to talk about Joel Embiid's hand. But before we do that, let's talk quickly about DraftKings. We've all had that one atrocious fantasy draft that ruins your entire season, right? If you're a responsible fantasy player, you probably still pop in once a week, set your lineups just for the integrity of the league, but you've all but lost interest because your high draft pick got hurt or the rookie that you bet on turned out to be a dud. It doesn't have to be that way, and playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings is the best way to put your knowledge of basketball to the test. DraftKings is giving away over $400 million in prizes this season. That's a lot of Jimmy Butlers. No matter what your skill level is, there's a contest waiting for you at DraftKings. Drafting your team is simple. Just select 8 players and stay under the $50,000 salary cap. The best part is you get to draft your new team every day without a long-term commitment. There's no better way to turn your love of basketball into cash. To download the app, head on over to DraftKings.com now and use our code SIXERS to support the show and enter a free contest with your first deposit. And remember, there will be over $400 million in total prizes up for grabs throughout the season. That's code SIXERS to play for free with your first deposit. Only at DraftKings. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Okay, so how worried are you about Joel Embiid's hand?
How weird was that? So it has been said to me, or I think a reader wrote this, that they thought the Memphis game was when he first kind of re-aggravated it. I got to go back and look at the video of it, but it would make sense. He has not shot the ball well in, I guess, 3 out of the 5 games since then. 4 out of the 5. Sorry. He, even with last night's hot start, I think he was pretty bad for him in the second half of last night's game. I don't know. I mean, God, and then he brings up that it's going all the way back to playing against Phoenix last year. That was New Year's Eve, man. Think about all the basketball he's played since then.
And he was pretty direct in saying that he's kind of been dealing with it. Like, they've been finding ways to manage it. It didn't sound like this is a complete re-aggravation either, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I don't know, what were you doing all summer then? Is this something that would have required surgery? I know, they've talked about how, what a great summer he had, and it seems like from a fitness standpoint and, working on a lot of his skills, that's true, but I mean, shit, if his hand's hurting him, Like, should you have addressed that? I don't even know. It's
And all the explanation we got last year was that he had a sprained right hand, and he played through it. Like the X-rays were negative. How could something like this? And I'm not a doctor, and we probably have to talk to him if this continues. For that to linger for 11 months now, like that is. Yeah, I think hopefully it was more like a misspeak, and he, basically sprained the same hand again, and it hasn't lingered, and it isn't like something they've been having to manage too hard over the intervening 11 months here, because that was a huge curveball. And you're right, he's come out, especially the last 2 games, really strong starts. Over the last 43 minutes of play, I think he shot like 2 for 15 against the Magic. Didn't look himself in the second half of the game last night, and maybe that's just conditioning. Like maybe, like you said, they've played a lot of games, they've done a lot of travel, they've played a lot of back-to-backs. I think they've played almost half of their back-to-backs already.
He might still lead the NBA in minutes, which is crazy. Yeah. So good for him.
So maybe these struggles are just that, but you really hope this isn't something that's going to bother him all year long.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the Bill Simmons body language doctor, but he wanted to get that out after the Utah game. Like, you could tell he was like, man, this is hurting me. It's not great. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. Like, my hand is really swollen right now. And I don't know, what it involves, because he comes back and plays last night, and he starts. I mean, that first quarter was just as good as it gets from him. What is the type of pain management that this requires? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I am for something that wasn't even on my radar last week. It's fairly concerning right now. It's something that you definitely have to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think that's probably about all I have.
That's it. One request for everybody. Somebody find a way to get the Goodfellas Jimmy scene onto a GIF or a video. Try and be creative. The Phillies, they did that when Jimmy Rollins hit the double in the 2009 NLCS.
Off Broxton. Yep.
Let's see if we can get one of those. I will retweet. I would love to see that. It's pretty good. I don't know. Maybe get Zumhoff's call on the radio in Goodfellas. I don't know. That's all I got.
That Phillies one was done perfectly. That was very well done. I've enjoyed that for many years. So I agree with you there. All right, I think it's time to wrap it up. Rich, avoid those ice cream machines if you can, and have a good one.
Get better, man.
I'll try. It's a slow roll, but I'll try. All right, see ya.
See ya.